Hello and welcome back to the podcast. Today, I have a little bit of a different episode for you today. We're going to be talking about the underworld and death. This has been a huge theme coming up for me in my own life and has been coming up a lot in the community and the channel collective and with my clients. So I have a lot to say about this. I've been doing a lot of underworld work and have just a lot of things. So we're going to dive into it. Before I jump fully into today's topic, I just want to give a quick reminder. I am super excited because my new program, Embodied Goddess, is officially open for enrollment. We're starting May 9th. I'll put the link in the show notes. I always don't know if I'm saying description or show notes, depending on the platform. Show notes, podcasting, show notes. This is unlike anything I've ever done before. And also just FYI, I'm getting over a cold, so sorry if I sound a little weird, but this is unlike anything I've ever done before. I am really pumped to see what comes through. This is going to be a program where the primary content is taught by different goddesses. I channel themselves. So I'm going to go into trance and I'm going to channel the lessons live. There's going to be 8 different transmission calls. And the point of these transmissions is to unlock a different goddess code within. So we are going to be covering all different types of topics, from connecting with the divine, activating your divine feminine, of course, activating angel frequencies and angel codes, compassion, love, relationship, the way we dress, the way we show up, showing up in divine feminine leadership. It's going to cover a lot. So the different goddesses are going to be teaching the information. Each transmission call will have a different code, and then we'll have time at the end of each call to talk about it, Q&A, dive in deeper. So 8 of those 90-minute calls, and then we're going to have 3 more integration Q&A calls. So this will be for Q&A, for coaching, diving in deeper, just to kind of take in everything that you're receiving. This is a huge energetic activation. So you're receiving the content, but also just that energy work, that frequency transmission that comes with it is going to be super potent. And then we're also going to have a big energy healing activation call as well at the end to just really fully integrate all of the codes that have been activated. So for me, this is like the best of everything I love about working with people in group containers. The energy is so potent, and it's like a next level mastermind essentially, and also brings in all of the channeling and the codes from the different goddesses that I work with. So I'm super excited about this. Link will be in the description below. Again, we start May 9th, and if your soul feels drawn to that, I would listen. You know, any group program or mastermind I create, I always am very excited to see what happens because they are pure magic. So really excited about this one. Definitely check it out. Would love to see you inside if it resonates for you. And that's my main announcement. So I want to back up a little bit about kind of what's been going on. The last month for me has been so weird and just a lot going on. And there's not a bad or a good attached with that, just so much. And for me, I feel like the last year I've last almost 2 years, I've been in the void, like just different versions of the void. And I just came out of it. I don't know what else to say about it. You'll be able to tell. I just came out of it. And the coming out of that was really like this April. And I went to England, and so much happened in England, so much turned on, so many intense spiritual experiences and activations. And I got really sick at the end of it, caught some kind of flu. And it seemed like everybody that I knew was getting some type of flu or whatever it was. Came home, was super sick. And then the day after I got better, I went out with my friends to celebrate my birthday, and I sprained both my ankles, and then I couldn't walk. I was so triggered. It was kind of funny. I literally couldn't walk. And I was in a lot of pain, and just what's going on here? And I also had a lot going on family-wise. Somebody very close to me has been very sick, and it's definitely been difficult. It's been difficult for my family and for me, and I've just been really emotional about it. This hit me different than, I don't know, it just hit me different. I mean, every person we know who transitions, it hits a little bit different because they're all different people. But yeah, this was really emotional for me as he was going through his transition process, and it was just really drawn out. So I ended up, like, as soon as I could walk, flying home to see him, hopefully before he passed. And I did get to, so I'm really glad about that. And it was a really interesting experience for me communicating with him when he was not yet crossed over, but like on the cusp, and so I want to rewind again. And just because I know everyone tunes in at a different place, just a little background like on me. I mean, I've always been really connected to people who have crossed over. So when it comes to your psychic abilities, there are different frequencies that we can tune into. So like different radio stations. And often we are more naturally attuned to certain radio stations than others. So you have people who specialize in, and all of these terms can mean different things to different people. So just for ease of communication, what I might say is a more classic medium, people who specialize in mediumship of communicating with loved ones who have crossed, and so people might have had a loved one who has entered the non-physical, and they go visit the medium to communicate with that family member or loved one, or whoever it is. So that style of mediumship. And then there are other people who are more naturally attuned to the angelic realm, or to the realm of more classic spirit guides, or more so to the ETs. There's all different types of, or even, ancestors specifically. There are all different types of specialties, so to speak, within psychic abilities. And we can talk to all different types of beings and switch the radio station, but often we might have a certain frequency that we enjoy the most, or just more naturally attuned to. It comes through really easily, however that shows up for you. So I very much toggle between all my radio stations. And I will say my mediumship radio station, just being totally honest, I've talked about this before, is probably the one that I lean into the least. It's my least favorite. And I'll say why. Probably because I've just spent so much of my life kind of like dealing with it, if that makes sense. And it's definitely it's probably like one of my trigger points. It's always been the one that I've just been very naturally attuned to. And everybody would bring up to me like different mentors I worked with, different psychics I saw, like things like that. People would always bring it up to me like, you have so many dead people around you, like everyone's just waiting to knock on your door. And I'd be like, ugh, I know. And that was just because when I really first opened up my gifts, I spent a lot of time helping people cross. Like that was one of the first things that my mentor at the time taught me to do. And because when I first really like turned on intentionally, I just had lines and lines of hundreds of beings who wanted to talk to me, wanted to tell me something, or needed help transitioning, things like that. So I just spent a lot of time doing that, and I would spend hours a day doing it, and I would be staying up really late, and it was just like, this whole other behind the scenes thing I was doing. And I kind of started to get tired, and I was like, I'm not getting paid for this. But I don't know why I didn't just offer that as a session, honestly. I just didn't, because I don't know, it just felt like whatever. It wasn't my calling. And I've shared before just different experiences with with people who have passed thus far, and going through major phases of my life where that person was really kind of like attached to me, and I was getting a lot of information from that loved one specifically. Anyway, so it's something that's gone on. Flash forward, fast forward, I don't know. When I first started really getting trained by Goddess Isis. So Goddess Isis is one of the energies I work with most closely. She is, there's a lot of different beings I channel and who are my main guides, but there are some that my soul frequency is a lot more attuned to. And Goddess Isis is one of those. She's my main. So, when I first started channeling her, and I mean, I'll never forget the first time she came to me. Like I was sitting in this room. I was at my friend's house in Los Angeles, where crazy shit always went down at this house. It was like right on a ley line and very activating for me. And I was sitting on the couch, and all of a sudden, like all of the lights just start like flickering and changing, and it gets dark. And then I feel this huge presence flying in, and she's standing like across the room in the corner, just like huge wings. And I was like, she didn't come in like glowy hologram form. She came in like might have been solid kind of form. Anyway, it was powerful. And one of the first things she did was told me to close my eyes, and she was gonna take me some places. And one of the places she took me was down to the underworld. Okay. So she took me down in the underworld, and this is when I started getting kind of trained in some of the work she did in the underworld. And I started doing some of that, and I was like, I don't know about this. Not super exciting for me. So, and that little bit of resistance is obviously telling you something. Right? Like, oh God. So anyway, she's laughing at me right now. I'm not channeling, like, well, I'm at the end of this. I don't know how this is going to go right now, but I always call them all in. So they're all around me every time I'm podcasting, because I never know what's going on. So, have that all going on, all my underworld experiences from the Isis perspective. And then a couple months ago was when Anubis started coming in really strongly. And obviously, like, Anubis is the god of the underworld in the Egyptian pantheon. And I've seen Anubis, like I know who he is, seen him around, seen him down there, but he wasn't like a main guide, or I wasn't working a lot with him. And a couple months back is when he really started coming in. I was like, okay, you and me now. Let's do some things. And that is when basically they said that they really wanted me to help out with the underworld. And since then, I've been doing a lot of stuff down there. Down there. You know what I mean? And and to be honest, part of me was like, is there some way I can bring this into the 3D, whatever it is? And it feels like this podcast is how. I was like, all this time I'm spending down here, what's going on? So what's happening kind of like in the transition out of this reality, like into the non-physical, has been very interesting. And there are different ways of perceiving that transition. Okay. So like this underworld experience is one experience, one perception. And there are many others that you could tap into. I have tapped into as well, but I'm just using this as the one of my experiences here as a psychic. So the way it looks down there, there's basically like a lot of rooms. Okay. And I hate to say it like this because I feel like it's going to really give not the right energy, but it kind of reminded me of like Alcatraz. Like I grew up outside of San Francisco. So it kind of reminded me of that, but it's not like scary. Okay. It's just like a lot of like, that's kind of like the format. I don't know. A lot of these like different rooms like that. And what's been going on down there, how do I describe this? So what's really interesting is a lot of people are on their last incarnation. Okay. So a lot of people are like fully, we're good, like last incarnation. And there's a ton of fresh energy coming in. There are a lot of fresh souls, new souls here that are incarnating. And, you know, we can have a whole other conversation around the kids coming in and how incredible they are and how powerful they are and just how different they are. And one of the reasons is it's like they don't have karma, you know, like it's their first incarnation. And a lot of people are closing a lot of karmic loops. A lot of people are on their last incarnation. And we have gone through a lot of collective traumas in the last few years. And a lot of people are exiting really quickly. And what's the best way I can describe that? So we have different exit points. There are different exit points we can take, you know, the same way like we have free will choice and we can make different choices in our daily lives. That shifts the timeline a little bit. The same way, you know, for most people, it's not that you just have one person that you could get married to and be happy with. You know, it's like there's lots of potential ideal partners. With exit points, we have different exit points that we could take. And the way they show it to me, it's like a lot of people were aligned with a certain exit point and there's a lot of momentum in that direction. And what happened in the last few years was a lot of people got pulled onto a different timeline to a different exit point. And I'm not just talking about the deaths from what happened specifically in the last couple of years, like in terms of, I'm trying not to say the word, you know, the thing, the sickness. Just a lot of other things have shifted. And right now is where there's a lot of people exiting the planet, a lot of like sudden experiences for people exiting the planet, a lot of like we as humans perceive it as that was too soon, it was too short, is what the common perception might be. Get to that. But kind of what's happening in the underworld has been that it's like it was weird because it was like totally cleared out. It was totally like cleared out. It was very strange. And then in the last like 6 months, it's been really overcrowded. And there's a lot of just like confused beings, confused souls, I'll say. Confused and not fully ready to kind of like move on. And so a lot of what I've been doing down there is healing work, like helping them heal, lots of different conversations to create closure, helping them understand like what's happened, like what they're stepping into, what it's like on the other side, shifting a lot of misconceptions, because it's kind of like they're just staying stuck and kind of and just like confused. And there's a lot of energies that are like, wait, that wasn't like it wasn't supposed to be right then. Like, how did that happen so fast? And helping them like kind of see the bigger picture and tap into that other perspective. And you know, it's a very human mind ego thing to feel like that was too short, like we're judging that, but is that really true? From a soul perspective, it's happening as it's supposed to. And you know, for a lot of people, they can hop back in, and there's also a lot of people exiting because they're going to hop back in. There's a lot of people exiting because well, some people it's complete, you know, complete. For others, they said yes to the mission, and the bulk of the mission they actually can support most being in the non-physical. Maybe it's more important for them to be on a different planet, or it's more important for them to support as a spirit guide. But there's also a lot of people who are hopping back in to be born again. So this could be through like it could be in a similar family or for a friend, like that soul hopping in to be the child, as we're seeing a lot of these kids coming in. There's also, even with pets, like it's not uncommon for a pet to pass before someone in the family unit is going to have a child, because sometimes that pet wants to jump in to the family system as the child, and they came in to experience family a little bit, and then they're coming in as a kid. So there can be a lot of that going on. There's like a lot of different options happening. So I've been doing a lot of work in the underworld, and it and then I want to move into, I guess, bring this together. When I was like visiting my family member who recently passed, and just like talking to him, right? Like he was not awake, hadn't yet fully transitioned, and I was just tuning into what was going on. And I also, with, permission, I gave him an energy healing session, and the session was really interesting for me. I've had many sessions with people who are on their way out, and the thing is, with energy healing, it's going to support whatever's for that person's highest and best for their highest healing. And so if their most healed state is actually transitioning out, entering the non-physical, then it will support that process happening more effortlessly in an easier way. It's not that it's necessarily going to bring them back to what the human might think is optimal health, So, but he was just, in a not ideal state on a human level for a while. He was in the hospital, for a while. And I think everybody just, wanted him to not be in pain. And anyway, so I sent him a session. It was really interesting. And, some of the conversations I was having with him on a soul level, there's just there was resistance, and the resistance was from different angles, and so having a lot of conversations with him just to kind of help him see things in a different way was supportive and freeing. But one of the things that really stood out to me was like, just this idea we have of like what is on the other side, and some of the fears, like when you're in that state, right? It's not that like when the person has fully entered the non-physical and is like back to just pure soul, like full remembrance on a bigger level, they're not there yet, right? So there's still that human thing, and it's not quite the same as like being in between after transitioning. It's like still alive here, and the fear, the ego, the conditioning is still like coming up in their experience, like where am I, like, but I thought this is what it is. And what it made me realize a lot, like, was, well, here's the thing. I really believe that the ease of the exit is often very connected to I don't want to say our beliefs about what's happening through death or in death, but I want to say whether or not we're resistant to it. Like exactly what I was just describing. Like, are we resistant to it or not? And I know for me, and I've talked about this before, I've done different episodes on my relationship with death and how that's changed. And death used to be my literally number one fear in life. Like literally number one fear, which is so crazy to me now. Like thinking about that, like I can't, like, because of who I am now and what I believe now and how I feel about it now and how comfortable I am with it now. like it's so wild to me. But you know what that was because I didn't really understand what was on the other side. And I grew up Catholic, and I was either going to heaven or hell. And the priest would tell me if I sinned and went to hell, and I was like, oh my gosh, if I don't make my bed in the morning, am I a sinner forever, and am I going to go to hell? Like, and that scared me a lot. And then I kind of rejected that later on. I just rejected religion. And then I kind of thought I was an atheist because people around me were an atheist. And at the time I just thought I had to pick something, and I was like, okay, I guess that's it. And then I thought, well, am I just gonna go into the dirt and that's it? That doesn't seem right to me either, because I did feel so connected to God. I didn't like to use the word. I felt so connected to Jesus. I could the Holy Spirit, I could feel that presence. I could feel that energy, and I was communicating, and I was like, that can't just be it. And I also just didn't want to believe that. But when I wasn't sure what I really believed, or when my belief was something I was afraid of, I certainly had a resistance to the transition, had I faced that. And I think my own near-death experiences were really liberating in that way. And for me to kind of realize at a young age, because there were multiple times when I thought that was it, and that's really what's made me who I am. And for me to experience that and kind of be in the emotion of that moment and be like, oh my God, is this it? And also feel I've had a great life. I've had a great incarnation, feeling at peace with that. And that's so much of why I live my life the way I do, because it's really important to me to every day, no matter which exit point my soul chooses to, wherever that is, I want to, in that moment, be I'm happy with it. I'm happy with it. I don't want to feel like I wish I had done more in this incarnation, or I should have said that thing or done that thing. I will not live like that. And I'm very conscious of that with everything I do. And that's part of why I don't like to waste a moment, and that doesn't mean being busy all the time. That's why I like to create a lot of things, and I like to just I don't know, just experience. And that's one of the things that was so interesting. It really meant a lot to me. I was talking to somebody who was an intuitive. It wasn't a reading, but it was just somebody I'd met who's actually a very well-known psychic. And this person looked at me and was like, you really love life. And I was like, what? And he was just like, your field is so interesting to tune into. I've never really come across somebody who just really loves experiencing life, and I you just really love the game, the experience. And I was like, yeah, I do, because I mean, why not? I'm here, right? And that's how I want to live it, because I know what that's like to feel that moment of oh, is this the transition? And I'm really glad I had that at a young age, and know that I want to, in that moment, feel like I did the things I wanted to do. I feel at peace with it. And also feel very excited about what's next, and understand that it's just one chapter, be ready to make that transition, and know that there's so many limitless possibilities. It's okay, that incarnation completed, boop, back over here doing these other things on these other planets, out here, coming back as a spirit guide, whatever I'm gonna do / am doing. It doesn't feel like this final, that's it kind of thing, done, no other options, all the fun is over. And I was talking to my boyfriend about this, just how interesting it is, culturally, different civilizations, different cultures, all think about death very differently. And we were talking about like Atlantean times and Lemurian times and how different it was, and just different civilizations and incarnations where it was like from a young age, you're taught about death as like this transition into like a higher state. And even just the terms people use around death, and their energy around it, for many people, they strictly use the term ascension, right? Like when my mother or my father ascended, like, and really regarding it as that, like an ascension. And, there's a lot that's gone into, why it's like this very sad, depressing thing. And that's not to say like not to feel low frequency emotion. I mean, I've cried a lot in the last few weeks, but it hasn't been because like, how do I even describe it? So because, it's compassion. It's, not liking seeing someone you love in pain or struggling there, like my heart, that resistance to the transition, and also just how he's feeling, and more of that, just it's a shift. And for me, I was crying, and I'm like, I mean, I'm probably going to talk to him more when he's in the non-physical, because that's how it is for me typically, because they'll come in all the time, right? But it's just a shift. The same way, like in transitions in this incarnation, I was talking about this a lot on the Channel Collective call. This past week, we did a rebirth ceremony, which next level. If you are not in the membership, join and go through that meditation because it is wild. But I was talking about rites of passage and rituals, and how in our society we've really lost this whole thing around rites of passage, and it's a big reason why people are like held back and feeling stuck. It's a really powerful thing to go through certain rites of passage or rituals that represent stepping into a new phase of our lives. And with that, like that's a death and rebirth process over and over again. Life is a series of deaths and rebirths, and there are some that feel a lot more profound than others, and so one of the examples we were talking about in the call was that transition from like child to adult, whatever that means, or child to teenager, or teenager to adult, and all the different ways that can be expressed culturally. Or we're talking about like a coronation, right? The idea of a coronation, and one day the princess becomes the queen, or the prince becomes the king, or whatever it is. A knight, being knighted, like there's a ceremony, there's a ritual, the marriage ceremony, right? The wedding in itself, and with that transitions, and you feel different through that, right? Having a baby shower, there's a ritual to that. There's a vibrational shift that comes with that. And without these rites of passage or a ritual, a lot of us are feeling lost. A lot of people are stuck developmentally or vibrationally at one phase. And so we can really use rites of passage and ritual to shift into that next phase. But my point is with this is when we're leaning into these rites of passage and we think about something like, okay, I'll use a really simple one. Like for me, I think about when I graduated high school and was going to college, and my high school graduation felt like a huge rite of passage, and I felt very different. Like it was a very different energy, because it's like, okay, after this, I'm moving out of the house. I've never lived like on my own before. I'm moving to a completely different city where I don't know anybody. Like it was such a big shift, and it was this representation of like really becoming an adult, more so. And then same thing with like graduating college. Those are moments for me where I felt this like vibrational shift. And with that, there was this death, there was this grieving, like that bittersweet moment of, you graduate high school, and you can compare this to anything. You could compare this like before and after getting married, or like birth, things like that, right? Like, but I'll use that as an example. graduate high school and there's this like death process, and it's like I'm saying goodbye to all my friends, even though I could still call them, we could still, visit each other, but it's never going to be quite the same. It's a big transition, and you might lose touch a little bit, but it's just kind of this goodbye of like, we're moving to different cities and everything's going to be different now. And it's just different, and closing the chapter on that whole version of us. And I cried a lot through that, because it was just its own death of like that iteration of me and that part of my life and that phase. And that didn't mean I wasn't excited for the new phase, and it didn't mean that it was bad. It was just kind of like grieving and going through that and honoring that. And in an interesting way, it's almost like the grief allowed me to celebrate it, because like the grief wasn't sadness that it happened. It was just like, just think about intensity and potency of emotion, like intensity of emotion around how important this was for me. And I'm like literally grieving it because I loved it so much. And that way I'm almost celebrating it. Like, thank you for this. And what if we had that same kind of energy around transitioning to the non-physical? But you know what this really brought up for me was just like, I think it lit a fire under my butt in a very different way. I connect to my why constantly, for like why I show up, why I do what I do. It's how I stay motivated. It's how it's like, I'm, it's my why. It keeps me going. And it was like another aspect to the why that I just hadn't felt so fully before, of how important I feel it is for people to hear and understand different perspectives, like different ways of viewing those phases of our lives, different ways of viewing those transitions. Similarly to like when we've had conversations here about divorce and marriage and like things like that. Just what if there's a different perspective, and it doesn't have to be one that resonates with you. It doesn't have to be one that you're taking on, but sometimes me just offering a different perspective that's different than the one that somebody has, even if they don't fully resonate with what I'm saying, that different perspective just opens something up for them a little bit, that then allows them to think a little bit more deeply about other perspectives as well. And then maybe have something drop in that's totally different that they hadn't thought of before, that actually does really resonate with them. And that's the important piece, so it's just like learning different ways of viewing things and different possibilities and seeing what feels good for you. And it's this same thing with death and transition. And I think about even physiologically about how different would this process be for people if more people were more at peace with this idea, if death wasn't this big scary thing for people, if people understood the transition in kind of a different way and understood maybe their grief in a different way. And it's I think that's one thing, is there's still plenty of emotion around it, right? It's like honoring our emotions and feeling our feelings, and also kind of seeing different pictures. And it's not like, it can be very easy to just bypass and be like, oh, well, they're just jumping in the non-physical, I don't care. And it's like, that's not real for me either. Like there's very real emotions, because it's different. It's just a different transition. And also, this like for me, feeling really good and at peace that like now he's in the non-physical and happy and feeling free. And I've had a lot of conversations with him where he's just like, holy shit, I didn't know there's all this cool stuff out here. Like, I can't believe I totally forgot in there. I totally forgot in there how fun it is. And like, I want to spend some time like zooming around out here and doing some fun things. And like seeing his energy shift back into like his full authentic self on a soul level, and like seeing that energy has been really beautiful and healing for me, like talking to him now that he's on the non-physical. But I think for me, realizing like, wow, a lot of like people's feelings around death and their beliefs around death, this is something that I think is so important for us to look at. A lot of people are transitioning, a lot of people are experiencing a lot of that in their lives. It's all around us. And if it's coming up that often, we got to look at like, what are our beliefs around this, and is there an opportunity here for us to see it a little bit differently, and could sing a little bit differently, offer us some more liberation around it, you know? And just once again, like noticing where we're still in illusions, noticing where we're still in conditioning, versus actually exploring these topics for ourselves. Like, well, what do I think? And it doesn't have to be something that's been laid out for you by anyone or anything else as like, this is how it works. And I think that's really important. It's not like it's just laid out of this is how it works. Even to be honest, you know, people ask me about like the death process, the transition process, and like, I don't know, like I will talk to different people who have passed, and I talk to different entities that I channel and work with, and like they all say it like it's different. And so I'm not gonna, so in my perspective, it's like, oh, it like happens differently for different people. Because that's just been what I channel, you know, and for me, it's been really helpful just to actually really dive into my beliefs around this and see kind of like a bigger picture. And I feel like that's helped me a lot with my like as I experience this with people around us, because like we're all going to experience people around us who transition out of this physical incarnation into the non-physical. We're going to experience that. But I think about, you know, when we talk about like creating the new earth and raising our frequency, this is going to be a lot of our collective views really shift, you know, and right now there's a very strong template of what people believe about death. And that template is also ready to be upgraded and shifted. And once again, like another fire under my butt around helping people connect with their psychic gifts. Check out my psychic development program, please. Like everybody has this. And I think it is so beautiful to be able to fully like to connect with and still have that communication with, often in an even more potent way and even more honest and authentic way, has been my experience, like with loved ones who have passed to the other side, you know, so you really can experience it as just that, as a transition, not as like a loss. And if perceiving it as a loss resonates for you, and is helpful for you and supportive for you, then do what is supportive for you. But I feel for me, I just really want to encourage people to like kind of expand how we're viewing things and what we think is possible. And I feel like that's a really beautiful healing opportunity. The same way, like, I mean, mediumship work where psychics are helping people talk to their loved ones, they're connecting, and it's some of the most powerful, some of the most healing work. It's really beautiful. And we also have that ability ourselves, you know, and even just the basic, like, ask for a sign, pick a sign. I asked my uncle this morning, I said, what's the sign from you? You know, like I have different ones from different beings. So whenever I'm seeing it, I'm like, oh, there he is. And he said bells and played the song of bells. So I was like, great. So now I know that sign. And I love that. Those are just little things we can do, right? And you can actually open up your psychic gifts. So is there anything else you want me to just say? Well, Anubis is just saying, what if you were to understand death as a higher initiation? What if you were to see death as the process of ascension, for it to be a rite of passage, as an initiation into your ascension? Would you see it differently? And that feels like I want to be careful with that, because it's like, how do I even describe that? Everything that we are experiencing here and how we're showing up here and the work we're doing here is all going to play into, you know, whenever we pick that exit point, which it's like fully living, like loving this experience, experiencing it, like fully loving, living in love, being love, experiencing life, letting life move through you, like following your joy, following your passion, experiencing deep love and emotions, all of that, then your soul is going to decide when the exit point is complete. And the ascension process will feel much different, right? And so what's happening for a lot of these beings who maybe are a little confused or feeling like, wait, was that my exit point? The part of the rite of passage or that ascension process, it's just a different process, because now there's this whole other component of it where there's more healing to be done right there, like in that pocket, and potentially, more incarnations, learning certain things. So I don't know why I want to say one more thing. Well, Isis is just saying, remember that what you fear controls you. And what you get to step into right now is facing everything that you are afraid of, but really thinking about it, realizing that it's not as scary as you think just to think about it. But facing the things that we're afraid of, looking at them straight in the eye in terms of just the concept and our beliefs about it, and breaking down that fear and transmuting it so that those fears aren't running our lives anymore. Because think about it, what controls people? Fear. In our daily lives, on a larger level, how are people controlled? That you tug on the fear strings, and that can control a whole population. So lots of things to think about. I know this is a very different energy than usual, but this has been a huge theme, big theme in my life and coming up a lot. And I know for a lot of other people it is as well. So I'm going to wrap up there. I'm very curious how you're feeling about it. Just wanted to share some of my own experiences and my own perspectives. And maybe that just got you to think about it in a little bit of a different way. But you know what? I'll say my perception of death is so different. The more time I spend in the astral realm, the more time I spend channeling, and the more time I'm spending in other dimensions. And it's like, they're all just different dreams. They're all just different dreams. So thanks again for listening. It's been a pleasure. If you enjoy this, take a screenshot, share it to social media, tag me, tag Christina the channel podcast so that we can repost and say a big thank you. It means the world when you do that. And I just appreciate you guys for listening, showing up, being open, and being such an awesome community. So thank you for that. That's going to be it for today's episode. I hope you have an amazing rest of your day. I will chat with you again next time.